Alright, so Kasa, and the Geshe Sembanamki, Zangpo, Yamin, Nangdu Kapla, and the Geshe Sem Jay Dandalaya, and the Jam Dangpo, Yamlan Chidu, and the going to church Bala, Bache, Yong, and the drawing ba, and the Jigay Dead on the Droba Chevaina, and the Ranglaya. Nyomo do some pure do and the Tuasum Gomsum Javala Bashi, Jamniji, Nyamdroya, Jamniji Gala, Bardushi, and Dinigi, Drobosina, Drongan Bares, and Delia rings, tarrings in the young pop, Tarjot, Yarings Shashi, and the Jamniji La Sobata, Nature Jasam Yatapi, Dawa again, just Yamlen Jashu Sem Ye, the Jashu Sem Ye, Sevi Chela, and the young. And the Anija and Diniki, Chisona Shuji, and Diniki, that Numo Pella Chipikansa, Lobdun Jiji, Disugu Numota Yamashia, and Tuasum Gomsum Jalia, and Dusjena, and the Jig are Lobdun Jada, Shanlia Pemberton, Jubures, and Janjusembanam Yamlin nowadays, it initiation. Tangazu Inea, that Janjusemba Yamlin Dinaji now and I sing around the Inea, Dangbong to Yamlin Chidu Kabla. Tanga to draw and do some power taking it in the draw in Bayena, Tisolia, just young channel, to get to some Gomsola, Betu Chimbochine, Yamnaja or the kitchen Boreas, and Gazan the Digo Shirwa.
Good morning. So yesterday we looked, having built on the previous 4 trainings of Bodhisattvas, which included the need to look at one's life, see whether one's environment is truly conducive to cultivating bodhicitta, or whether it's actually an environment that leads to the ready arisal of afflictions. We then came to the 5th practice, which is the need to employ that same technique, looking at the relationships that we have with others and seeing whether those that influence us, those that we have around us, are wholesome or not. And where we see that those that we have connection to, those we have relations with, the relationship is one that is unwholesome. In other words, leading to the ready arisal of the afflictions, as well as making it very difficult for us to engage in virtues such as receiving and teachings and reflecting on them, and leading to the imprints that we have for love and compassion waning or withering away. Such connections then, those who were to become bodhisattvas, when they were ordinary just like us, they temporarily separated themselves from such people. And they did so not with any ill will or harmful intent towards or negative attitude towards such people, but rather knowing that right now this relationship is not wholesome. For to become wholesome, the aspirant bodhisattva needs to temporarily separate themselves, strive wholeheartedly in the cultivation of bodhicitta. And when that is cultivated, then the new bodhisattva with its stable bodhicitta on a continuum can return to society, re-engage with those same people, and those people who are under the influence of unwholesome ways of thinking. Now the bodhisattva can have a positive impact on these people, a positive and beneficial impact, turning them away from unwholesome deeds, turning them towards virtue. So this is how the bodhisattvas in the world, they trained when they were ordinary just like us. So we should emulate their example. And we too should separate ourselves from companions who are unwholesome. In the same way that friends which are unwholesome, there were 2 types. Now we come to the next practice of bodhisattvas, which is that of wholesome friends. And here, when the need to rely on wholesome friends also includes 2 types, namely those of ordinary companions and a spiritual teacher. The sixth practice of Bodhisattvas is, relying on them, my faults cease, and my virtuous qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherishing spiritual teachers even more than my body is the practice of Bodhisattvas.
Lam lobat tempa ina nga jugilia ane ting lam lobat tempi tempa chiki tengen chiki jesu chamba ina nga julia nyomo dusumya peya da ane kowa da ane tarba da tamje kimbe ko phanto bale bardo chimbachi chigo res de ma tingyo ma de sonwa ane dusum pewa je gengi ane deniki jobo da yamdo ane 양릉 제고 res je du sherwa anda diring nga do karchi gorasena da nga julia 아니 코위에 동안을 줘야지 타바다 탐지 김벽고 뭐 토고로와 지상 타바다 탐지 김벽고 뭐 토발라 타바다 탐지 김벽고 방 람마노와 아니 야구시 대신에 아니 개위신 질에 띵고 그래 지상 개위신 질 띵고 그래 다 개위신 질에 띵지 데니기 안쪽에 얌린 지디갑라 아니 소소라랑기 한 지금 마신 바나 로제바 데네 로지기 제발라 데네 아주게 라바스미 냠렌디기야 야르줘야나 잠니지 고물라야 판도유에디간 다 안데니게 튀었음 검소 소소 마신 와디기 말 제일 랍된 시간다 데니기 로바야고 데니시 땡고 그래서 시고로 와다
In the fifth practice of Bodhisattvas, we saw that friends which are unwholesome are both ordinary companions as well as teachers who present mistaken paths, mistaken methods. They may have a virtuous, they may have a good motivation, or they may have a motivation to deceive one, but whatever motivation guides them, they are presenting paths and techniques and trainings that one should cultivate that actually lead to the accumulation of negative karma, that leads to the accumulation of obstacles to the generation of correct paths, of actual paths of virtue. So such teachers, we were advised yesterday that it's imperative that one does not come under their influence. Rather, having a wish for liberation from suffering, wishing, in fact, even to become enlightened for the sake of others, one needs to rely on a skilled and realized spiritual teacher, a teacher who has both knowledge and experience of all the practices that are required in order to actualize such goals such as good rebirths, liberation, and enlightenment. And through relying on such a skilled and realized teacher, then what is currently unknown to us, such as the paths which lead to suffering, as well as the paths to be cultivated that lead to lasting, sustained happiness, these that we have not yet come to realize and don't have complete knowledge, let alone experience of, under the skillful guidance of a genuine spiritual teacher, we will be able to cultivate those paths within our own continuum.
Tisa rangi ane gewa chima lada mi kowa toyalaya an dangpo samla tangtang kunlong kane skugure an dele nyamlen kane kane chegure sayadang dene tarpa toyala ane dangpo kunlong kane skugure del tarpa toyage dondala lam nyamlen kane kane chegure sayadang ane sanjo kowa toyala ane janshu sem geyadang an janshu sem geyala ane dangpo kane kane nyamlen chegure 냠는 자주 심기에 그러나 냠는 제다 림바디게 차상 신화다 다 자주 심기에 찬에 양파진 중에 냠는 제다 림바 차상 신화 오두치네 개위 신인직 땜바이나 개위 신지 여바이나 소수기 냠는 여바 안 소수기 냠여 여바 안 샤리야 땜바리야 마노와다 마추바 갑단 뒤라바바 차상 야고电信의 개위 신지 여바이나 다 개위 신이 땜바 개위 신인 생긴다 땜바다 차고레스 제상 개위 신이 어디는지 개위 신이 땜바이나 아니 뇽모바디게 마주기 뇽모바디게 마 세도 그래서 그랬네. 식당보다 가시 때나 내가 세규신 데니게 기위 신인지 때제 니 제소장제 기위 신인 니 제소장 디로 람든 제바나 신가도 냠네 제바 있나 아니 내가 세리에서도 가지고 코와당 손께기 디바디게다 아니 말 사도 기에 맞춰봐 송야당 말 기에바디게 찾아마 세야다 되네 용구리 해지래.
Look at the first line of this verse. Relying on them, my faults cease. Them refers then to spiritual teachers. So why is it imperative that one relies on a genuine spiritual teacher? Well, this is because we require knowledge, and we require not just mere information, but we require knowledge of great depth and profundity, presented in a way that we can understand, in a way that makes sense to us, in a way that we can overcome our doubts. Moreover, the purpose of presenting the Buddha Dharma is not a mere imparting of knowledge, but it's to impart knowledge which is to serve as a basis to be cultivated within oneself, so that one can gain experience of it. One's mind, one's way of thinking, one's personality can be transformed. So therefore, one requires a spiritual teacher who is able not only to skillfully impart knowledge, but also skillfully explain how one can cultivate that knowledge within oneself, how one should reflect and meditate on that knowledge, thereby gaining profound experience of the Buddha Dharma. So we have attained a good rebirth in this life. This has been done in dependence on our own endeavors in the past life, which came about in dependence on being guided skillfully. But we need to make ever greater progression towards the attainment of our goals, that of liberation and the state of Buddhahood. In order to do that, we need a skilled teacher, a teacher who is able to present the complete and unmistaken path, all the various stages, or both the knowledge of what is meant by liberation, what is meant by Buddhahood, and as well as then the complete and unmistaken stages that one needs to cultivate and how to do so. So, for example, in order to attain Buddhahood, having a thorough knowledge of liberation, how to attain liberation, is insufficient. In addition to those methods, one needs to cultivate bodhicitta. Therefore, one needs a teacher who can guide one in first explaining what is bodhicitta, what are the various stages in the cultivation of bodhicitta, and then guide one skillfully in one's cultivation of those stages. And not just of bodhicitta then, but also of the subsequent perfections. So therefore, it's imperative that one relies on a genuine spiritual teacher whose knowledge is unmistaken and is fully experienced. Such a teacher then can guide one in how to cultivate the complete and unmistaken paths in one's own continuum. And as one relies on one's teacher and receives teachings, reflects on them, meditates on them, as we see in this line, one's faults, or the negativities one has previously accumulated that serve as hindrances to the attainment of good rebirth, attainment of liberation, the attainment of bodhicitta and enlightenment, these cease.
다 조상보 세디 간치라 고르시나 당한저 다데텔에 디갑서 시에게 조상보 세디 다데네게 소소라랑기 기위 신인기 지수 장제 하는 게 수시 다데 대신에 시바나 기위 신인 타바다 탐지 캠별람 창라마노와 호电信ken기 기위 신인 지수 장 하는 소소라랑기 되는 냠len제 어데네게 냠len제 되겐 어데네게 조 제되겐 지기 아니 여바제 안디기 소소라랑이야 안지 개고마시다 어디니 나중에 직 샘제로 디바로 샘제 수에게 레가로 찍고 좀 보이네 아디스기 조 아데데 샘제 수기요 말에 야고 말에 세다 디네기 ngazu jipa setar dang ya wo re se pa du chen ngazu ya semje suya le ya ane ka dom je da anya ji 아다 미교다 디슬이야 데네 기진에 교라 디슬로 로고 제도는 야부도 ngazu 차상 로고 제고 사제 누수 구매제 안샬라 판도 주비야 당 안에 양 건절이야 안디는 저 최고 부야 돼 뒤에 데네 야부도 ngazu 데네 부이되는 야부도 와서 안에 데네 그 구매제 장주 최고 부야 부주야 안에 데네시네 안디는 아주 지기 최년가 더 최지 데네진 라마시 최송 최년 와서 최년야 한 최선 퇴바다 안 된다들한테 디진 라마기 최선에 딘딘 송쇼 딘딘 라구도와 맞아 딘네 삼당고도와 세지마 맞을 도시네 디던달라 삼당주야 근데 삼당야 딘네 가서 곰로지 딘네 야고다 딘네 곰잡네 야고도와 라메 딘네 송오다 딘네 곰잡네 배고도와서 도시네 가서 계획 곰잡주야 지상 가서 꿈마 계획 꿈마 제제 구마지 가서래 도시네 가서 개와 사주비 데니기 조보디 다 조보 상보래죠 조보 상보래스 데니기 조보디 가서기 기디나 데다 님들 셈다 예보 제제 하는 거 직조보 땜바이나 안 디기 가서래 개위 초패야래야 로지기거를 개와디 피거 제상 가서기 제와자 가서기 셈 신디비 제 내가 제와디 약고요 말고 각동 제위인자 데니 인자 가서기 디비 고숨기 디비 녀바지에 요야 녀바디 파 세루 가로 그래서 지사 데네 자다 개위 자와라 코쿠마 정도 개위 자와 제바인자 녀메기 디비 자와 지지비 녀바 사와여나 데네기 녀바디 마 충치 마 세루 그래서 지사 데네자 데네기 아니 개와 조보텔라 네 취 최조 세거다 개와 조보 상보세나다 취 조보라나 최조라 그래 개와 상보라 그래 가서 조보 상보라 그러와 데네인사 디수이 데나 안띵고 그래 조보 데니스 띵고 그래 제래
다른 지금 한번 for someone to be suitable to be a spiritual teacher, then it's imperative that they have knowledge of the complete and unmistaken path to attain good rebirths, liberation and enlightenment, and not mere intellectual knowledge, but experience of this. Because it's independence on the experience based on knowledge that a spiritual teacher will have a pure motivation and will have the knowledge and skill to guide individual students, guide them in a way that's appropriate to where they are, to their spiritual development. And the first objective of a spiritual teacher is to guide those that they come in contact with away from accumulating negativities. Because ordinary beings have a strong habituation to accumulating non-virtue. Some take great delight in killing. Others take great delight in harming others, harming either physically or verbally through acts such as killing or stealing, or of course through the way of speech, abusing others, belittling others, talking harshly to others. So the first concern of a spiritual teacher is to guide beings away from such behavior, and rather, through showing them skillfully the results that follow from such behavior, turn them rather towards virtue. That then is the second main objective of a spiritual teacher. First is to guide them away from non-virtue, and secondly, guide them towards virtue. So rather than taking life or bringing harm to others, guide beings to protect those who are in fear, protect those who are in danger, protect those who are in suffering from fear. And rather than taking from others, taking what's not given, stealing from others, rather seeing that others are in need and offering to them, offering material offerings, offering service to them, being there for others, developing a wish to help others. And moreover, guide others to see the great value of the three jewels, and encourage students to make offerings to the three jewels, and moreover, to ensure that those offerings have been acquired ethically, that their students engage in right livelihood, in types of work that are ethical, and thereby make offerings which have been ethically sourced. And in order to be able to do this, a spiritual teacher, a genuine spiritual teacher, requires knowledge and experience based on that knowledge, and thereby is able to skillfully guide others, impart knowledge, as well as impart the various techniques based on their own experience in how to cultivate that knowledge. And as the students make some progress, they are able to impart more profound levels of meaning, more profound levels of knowledge, as well as subtler meditation techniques, how to cultivate these more profound teachings within themselves. And in this way, those who come into contact, and especially those who come under the care of a spiritual teacher, under the guidance of a spiritual teacher, they start to experience a transformation in their way of thinking, in their way of dealing with life's difficulties. And this way they gain ever more confidence in the teacher and the teachings. They experience more peace of mind, a mind less disturbed by life's difficulties, and thereby, in the dependence on this inner transformation, they apply themselves ever more to fulfilling the guidance of their teacher. In this way, their virtue grows. And through the growing of the virtue of the student, proportionately, as we see in the first line, their faults cease. From this description, then, we can understand that the term that we have here as a spiritual teacher, we can understand its meaning, because it literally means, the literal term is a virtuous friend. Friend here is a wholesome friend. So the opposite of what we saw in the previous practice, where the kind of people to turn away from, this is a wholesome friend, a friend whom we should turn towards, a friend whose guidance we should embrace. So this is the meaning of friend in the term virtuous friend. And the meaning of virtue is this wholesome friend turns us away from non-virtue through turning us towards virtue. Through turning us towards virtue, our previously accumulated non-virtue diminishes, ceases. So such a friend, such a wholesome friend, or a Dharma friend, is our spiritual teacher.
Gashi tena nyeba sekyo shinyon sido tenege kiwi shinyen tang an didebi ki chobu Zangpo tenpa ina rangi nyeba dige saba makiawa tang kosum ki dikpa saba saba nyema sabi dikpa dige se rugu ore she sekyo shinyon sen. An dikpa seba ma se yunden yarangwe dada pelgyuri se orada sikniba dila. Chizan yunden dige 아니 야 림기 지나가서 야 윤대디 야 철철철 그래서 근데 누구로와 ben에 계위신 된제 계위신 디젤마 안취시 대송바나신短大되게 삼다 두스 냠는 제바나 먼저 계위 윤대디게 아니 지 개바디게 야 윤대 철철 줘야다 아니 야 지 소수기 조고대다 내내기 최로대다 님도 추기 조고나 전부제 안 조고되기 님도 계시된 조고되기 안 제바나신 아주 직도 제바이나 아주르기 디바사야다 뉴조야다 계획자와되기 누가 철철철 곰시 철철 냠용 철철 주고 진행자 퇴섬 그 되내기 계획 신년을 되네 퇴섬 곰숨 야네 야도 지야다 되니 조고되기 튕기 로지는 아주 퇴섬 곰숨 지야다 되니 차야도 되니 소소라라기 안에 라바숨기 윤대 추ring이 라비 윤대 딩이징이 라비 윤대 아니 셔럽이 라비 윤대디게 라바숨기 냠랭기 윤대디게 다와 권이요 다와 영원 나시스르다 다와 영원은 세번지게 다와리아 지게 추주마도요 말 세번이래 철숨을 철도 신 샤바 종화부터 철스는 샤바 종화스도 차상 고고 차상 된 거로 지자 세번지네 종화부터 다와들 다와 영원스왜 야야야의 철철 주고로 어디 나신 진행하는 쪽에 라바숨이 연대다 퇴섬 곰숨이 연대디게 마주게다 디포포야다 개워 주비야 냠랭가는 시기주 유메 대수신에 되게 연대되게 야 안되지 야야야 주고대 누가 철시 주고대 서로 연대되게
As we see in the first line, through relying on a virtuous friend, our faults gradually diminish and cease. And this is done in conjunction with what is presented in the second line. Our virtuous qualities grow like the waxing moon. So there's this relationship. You can think of it like a scale, that as one's virtue, one's merit grows, so too does our negativities decrease. Or if we're focusing on decreasing our negative karma, that provides a scope for our virtuous karma, our capacity for the virtuous karma to grow. So there's a scale, there's a relationship between these two. These two need to be engaged in together. And furthermore, as we start to experience progression through our endeavors, and we start to experience progression in that we start to be aware of our change in our way of thinking, of our faith of conviction, our trust in our spiritual friend grows and our teacher grows. And this gives us ever greater encouragement or desire to hear more teachings, and not just to leave it at that, but to reflect on these teachings. And as we do so repeatedly over a sustained period, because to transform age-old, harmful habitual patterns takes a long time. So as we make effort over a long period of time, we will start to see our inner growth growing like the waxing moon. And here what this specifically refers to is the three trainings that were referenced yesterday, those of ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So these trainings, our ethical outlook, a subdued mind, which is the basis of concentration, and concentration then being the basis for the cultivation of wisdom, these will grow like the waxing moon. The Tibetan calendar is a lunar calendar. Being a lunar calendar, it starts then with the first of its lunar month is just when there's a slightest slither of moon showing. And then this continues to the middle of the month, the 15th. And the 15th then is when the moon is full. So through relying on our virtuous friend, first, slightest slither of virtue grows. And this counteracts the darkness of ignorance until it eventually culminates on the 15th of the lunar month in a full moon, when all that is showing is virtue. And this comes about through relying on our virtuous friend, our spiritual teacher.
ane kiwi shinyin ki ngā rātula kāra tsungko re, labja kāra kiawa re labna, ane kiona ane jawa chema kaso re, kasang sheba na shinyu. Ta tse digi jawa jang shinda nyingbo yo ma re es, chisang tse digi jawa zangyo, tse di zamgi dewa la cha je digi gyu penjur nyin yudu, ane kor wangsha kazi yo bine, digi tse chima la pengi ma re es, chisang di chasang tse chima la kieto ya yo ma re es. 한 세치마라 파야기 댄상 댄주 밀류 리모제 토비야기 댄디 가르스 고고세네 가 저기 개와 류가 예수님이거니 예제 뒤미 수름 쏘야다 진배냠네 자 수배냠네 자 준전냠네 되게 제고 그래선 두술롭된 제도 마주디 냠네디 제도 마주 개와 치마하다 미고 뭐 토야다 난디 댄델이야 아니 지금 저기 튕긴 부좀 잡아야 최제야 그거 브라야기 규디 사고래 제가 네 규디 사용도 맞아 연대지 기고와 안디 마세 다나 고 제사다 미고바 토바진 지고 말다 다등 아주 미래 댄주 밀리 림보시사베 톱고 깔라고 시우레 이네 다등 아주 댄주 밀리 림보시 톱되어요래 댄주 밀리 림보시 톱이 뛴 될래야 아 저기 안에 지금 코위 동화들을 줘야게 코위 동화를 꾼다 코위 동화를 탈도 예중 기고래서 예중을 삼바주 몸면 밖에 공부그래서 삼바게 공부그래서 안디 마세 랑세 지제 현심전 타예 바래 지자 라신 참마 대화도 받아 등음에도 지바래 되네 인자 안심전 탐제 랑리아 디야가래 두두아레스 카메 땅님데 심전데 땅님 공부그래서 안 심전데 랑게 파다 말 규용와 파 규용와도 곰 Dene semjen tamje rangila dinchimbo ima gom kugres. Dene dinchimbo gomne andele ya kitin ya penpa dukin sempe kitin jihagi gom kugres. Dene semjen tamje dewa de dembo sho sempe jamba gom yada. Semjen tamje dunga da jawa sho sempe ninje gom. De gomne semjen tamje dewa de demba da dunga da jawa da ngi jigi sempe ba semshu geje gom kugres. Di gomba ina ane semjen tamje guduna sanjo goba topro sho sempe janshu sem gom kugres. Dene ge lobde nawa nang yongdu giwi shinyi dene lobde nang. Den nang mase dene ge nang yongdu nga zugi di che so zhang che giwi shinyi lamden jeba na shin nga zu lobzhong che yongdu nga zu gom che dene ge che yongdu dene di gewa de chasang nga zugi le sago orwa. Chizan dene gewa sa bayan zang gewa de ya shuk sher zhuwa ya yangwa de pya se de pya tang dene shi shwa. Andi maze zhobo diki, churo diki ina soso ki nga zu nyamlen che la dene ge nyamlen che la ya o de shi giwi shinyi sumpa diki nyamlen dene che de shwa che che, kuma che che andu she ju bayan zang an dele dene nga zu ki gewa diki tarpa da tamche kimi ko tobi gyudan gewa gejur diki tsoga diki an sonam diki ya cha sa tu go ro wa je jiza yangwa de pe tang ro ji dene che go wa.
Den kena chudok sumdu, den also dokpo Zangpo di gerisen in Mada.
Dirwa de ge churo se dirwa de.
Kosa. It's through relying on a spiritual teacher that our virtuous qualities grow. And the way the genuine spiritual teacher guides one so that one's virtuous qualities do grow is as was explained yesterday. It starts with the first step of the presentation or rather the presentation encouraging one to look at one's life and to look at the life of those around oneself, coming to understand the nature of cyclic existence, in particular to see in the context first and foremost of this one life. So the first step is to look at this life of ours through watching our mental activity and our resulting physical and verbal activity, seeing how we are currently and have been dominated by striving to attain the mere pleasures of this life and overcoming the problems and difficulties of this life. And that is these thoughts of achieving the happiness of this life and overcoming the problems just of this life, the comforts and pleasures of this one life, that has kept us narrow-minded, preoccupied with activities that have no real meaning, that have no meaning usually of beyond today or tomorrow, certainly not meaning beyond this life. And the result of this is that our life, this life that has such great potential, is largely wasted. And it's because of this preoccupation with comforts and pleasures that will not last beyond this life, that we struggle to have the time and the energy to put into our spiritual practice and transform ourselves. And in dependence on this guidance, we are then encouraged to rather focus on cultivating an ethical outlook, a mind that is restrained, cultivating a generous attitude, an attitude of wanting to benefit others, cultivating patience, the mind that stays subdued in the face of adversity, and cultivating joyous perseverance, the mind that delights in these practices of virtue. Because these are worthwhile, and these are the causes that lead to good rebirth in our next life. So this is the first step that has these two components of looking at our current narrow way of thinking, coming to recognize this, and then being guided in developing a far broader attitude of engaging in a way of developing a way of thinking and activities that lead to a good rebirth. And then secondly, a spiritual teacher will expand our way of thinking, making us ever more broad-minded through getting us to understand, guiding us to understand our actual capacity as humans, our capacity of beings who have achieved a human rebirth that is precious, and seeing what we can achieve, how meaningful a life we can live. And here we are encouraged to reflect on the sufferings that pervade cyclic existence. And this is done so that we can develop an outlook that is far more broad-minded, where we look beyond just achieving a good rebirth, but to actually striving to attain liberation from suffering in its entirety, giving rise to the mind of definite emergence. And then in dependence on this, a genuine spiritual teacher, a fully qualified spiritual teacher, leads us into a third set of practices. And this is where we, in dependence on these previous realizations, we take this understanding and we apply it to the situation of others, seeing that they are no different from us. They too long for happiness that is lasting and stable, but are deceived by the desires of this life and deceived by mere mundane worldly concerns. We take this then as a basis to develop impartiality, thinking about this relationship that we have with others, that we have an intimate, close relationship formed with all beings since beginningless lives, and beings have shown us such kindness. And in this way, we develop an impartial attitude, we understanding this close and intimate relationship we have with all beings, and therefore there is no basis for discrimination of our current feeling of closeness to some and distance from others. And moreover, we come to gain a genuine understanding of the kindness that beings show us, both directly and indirectly, and not just in this life, but since beginningless lives. And this then is the basis that we use as a cause to give rise to the next meditation, the wish to repay that kindness, seeing how inappropriate it is to ignore the needs of those who are suffering and those who have shown us such kindness. And this then leads us to give rise to the wish to repay the kindness of others, and in dependence on this, we cultivate, as we heard yesterday, the minds of love and compassion. We cultivate the wish, may all beings experience happiness, may all beings be freed from suffering, may all beings cultivate the causes that lead to lasting stable happiness, and no longer accumulate the causes that lead to suffering, but rather eliminate previously acquired causes. And in dependence on these minds of love and compassion, the fourth and fifth of the six causes, we generate the altruistic attitude of universal responsibility, where we take it as our individual responsibility to ensure that beings are guided in how to develop the causes of happiness and eliminate previously accumulated causes that will only lead to suffering. And here, having cultivated the six causes, we generate bodhicitta, where we commit to striving to become the most skilled of guides, to become a Buddha for the sake of others. And in dependence on having generated bodhicitta, one then engages in the meditation and practices of the six perfections. So this all comes about then, these various steps, we cultivate within ourselves independence on having come under the care of a genuine spiritual teacher. In this way, we accumulate vast stores of merit. Our qualities grow like the waxing moon, and our faults gradually cease. And in addition to being under the care of a spiritual teacher, having turned away from the companionship and influence of harmful friends, unwholesome friends, now we keep the company of wholesome friends or Dharma friends. And these are the companions who act in accordance with the Dharma teachings and who encourage us in our spiritual development. And under the care of a spiritual teacher and in the companionship of our Dharma friends, our qualities grow like the waxing moon.
Rangi luye kyang chebar tsempa kesi lali yin sido chizang denigi shinyin digi shinyin di pe masigi di rang liya denigi lam tuyenche pe masigi den chenpo shures chizang denigi lama shinyin kiwi shinyin di korongi nye denigi nyama denisi nyamlenchi denigi nyamlenchi na tarchi ane 냠린 타친바래 다 그런 게 냠용어 돈에 아주를 제위 소소랑 제위 원게 남미기 디기위신의 랑을 아주 동아다 타나 삼바다 디기데 된다 셈비기 디기디 대제 띵게 대와 산요 고마지 토벌제나 삼정아주 제위 원게 아주랴 데니기 람 냠린 제데 템바디 뱀마스 야보레 해야지 남미기 기tin 템바다 나무 그런 게다 구송 투스미 유인데 덴제 야 지기위 디텐제 다 제자 되니 자 라마데 뱀마스 계친 뭐 자친뭐 휴지리 당아주 타바다 탄지견 띵게 대와 산지요 고마 토예기 토레 람딘제 델리아 치바 지고 뱀마스 게딘 침부리 아 삼제 덴제 랑기 류레 양 라마데리아 자체와제 제바 진제 안 라마기 라마야 안 최바 최고 부유제 녀버제야 당 라메기 안 도시네 십주셔야다 되니게 주시네 라마디 띵고레세지 어도 송고로와
네 타마디
최바 부시 라마레 최바 부 라마 녀버제제 라마디 띵고레세
This verse concludes with, cherishing spiritual teachers even more than my body is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So here, having come under the care and the guidance of a virtuous friend, of a spiritual teacher, through seeing his qualities, having the faith of conviction in his guidance and his qualities, we have now received many teachings, reflected on them, and we are starting to see our faults cease and our qualities grow. This then leads us to reflect further on his great kindness, because we are experiencing ever more happiness. Our mind is more peaceful. It's not so disturbed by life's difficulties. We are no longer so troubled by emotional upheavals or suffering, but rather our mind is more spacious, relaxed, calm and peaceful. And we realize this is because of our endeavors in hearing teachings and reflecting on them repeatedly over a sustained period. And we've only done so because of the encouragement and the skill and the guidance of our spiritual teacher, and therefore coming to recognize based on experience the great beneficial impact that our teacher has on us. And through our developing spiritual qualities, we are having a great impact on those around us. And that too is due to the skill, the care, and the guidance of our teacher. In this way, we come to cherish, to value our teacher, reflecting then on his qualities of his body, speech, and mind. Our faith of confidence grow ever stronger within us, knowing that it's through applying ourselves to his teachings and fulfilling his advice that liberation and enlightenment will come about. And thereby, readily, we turn to our teacher and we make offerings to our teacher, offerings of the three types, those of material offerings, the offering of a service through both physical behavior and speech, and the offerings of practice. This third offering, the offering of practice, is the one that our teacher values most.
draw somebody dinigi draw somebody lia and korongi dinigi lameka na shin chu chin yamne che pemba se yagore sa da jesu ira che da and di ma se korongi ngala ya and ji gewi yamne che gewa che ya lo kuma che da ni and ni ju gi diba diga ma and point ya da diba da ya le ya korongi dinigi roba che pemba se yago samne del ya and ji gawa komiata an jisu iran cheada an delia an duchine an je asosugi lüle ya za chewa chen de zhobot be ma se ya ko resm de zhobot nyom zho che dian ya de be ma se ge chi mo re che.
This cherishing our spiritual teacher. This comes about in dependence on following the advice of our spiritual teacher, which is to hear many teachings and reflect on them repeatedly over a sustained period, because it is that advice and our following of that advice that leads to our faults ceasing and our virtuous qualities growing. And it's independence on this experience of inner transformation that we come to value our teacher ever more. We rejoice in our great fortune at being under his care. We rejoice in our endeavors of having made the required changes in our life to receive the teachings, reflect on them repeatedly over a sustained period, and in this way we're seeing the change within us. And now we will come naturally, spontaneously, to value our wholesome friends ever more.
Dini inzada Geshe Sempa Geshe Geshe Sempa di Nyama Chue Nyamlen Chidu Tangpo Nyamlen Chidu Kabla an Du Shine Giwi Shin Diki Tien an Draw Zangpo Dini Tien an Dini Giwi Shin Di Rang Za Chenpo Tang Giwi Shin Yu Kusung Tusu Mi Yuan Tien Chaya Tang Rang Lia Jin Chenpo Yinba Za Chenpo Yinba on Du Shine Samata Shine and Ji Draw Diki Le Chisu Iran Cheche an Du Shine Geshe Sempa Namji Zangpo Nyamlen Chidu Kabla Khurang Sugu Du Shine Nyamlen Cheba Res Chisa Nyamlen Chene Di Nyamlen Cheba La Tene an Khurang Sugu La Geshe Semje Nene Parchen Dugu Nyamlen Che Dus Nyamlen Che Geshe Semje Odu Tene Soso Rangi Ne Deno Ane Geshe Sem Sanji Kopa Tobi Chirdu Lama Lame Giwi Shin Ngale Ya Labardo Ane Lame Yuan Tien Tongya Da Lame Kusung Tusu Yuan Tien Chaya Lame Tien Ya Lame Ge Gar Zhuye De Lame Gar De Gar Sene Lama Da Sanji Ngo Yeme De Daya Komya Tene Sanji Gi Gar Kare La Ne Sanji Sunye De Semje Nyan Nyam Thapa Semje Le Pempa Zhuye Da Semji Yu Dunga Seya Da Semji Digi Zhuye De Jeza Geshe Sempa Namji Lame Ge Gar Zo Zhuye De Karong Rang Chesing Samba Bangje Shen Jeba Ji Shen Yi Semje Yu Dunga Seya Da Shen Yi Digi Zhuye Le Ya Bezu and Lu Longche Chazan Najan Dus Chen and Kaso Shen Yu Dollar Shen Ya Digi Zhuye Da Dunga Seya Roche Pempa Zhugu Ese Geshe Sempa Namji Dus Chen Chale Nango Rejere.
Having turned away from unwholesome friends and now come under the care of a spiritual teacher, a virtuous friend. This was the life-changing decision that all beings who aspired to cultivate bodhicitta, aspired to enter into the bodhisattva paths, this is how they have all practiced. All beings who have given rise to bodhicitta within their continuum and are now practicing as bodhisattvas, they continue to reflect on the great qualities of their virtuous friends, of their spiritual teachers, the qualities of their body, speech, and mind. And as the practitioners, the bodhisattvas' qualities grow within them, they come to value their teacher ever more, seeing them as precious, appreciating their kindness, appreciating that the way they are training now as bodhisattvas is the same way that their teacher too previously taught, the way their teacher too previously trained. And now in dependence on following the skillful advice based on knowledge and experience of their spiritual teacher, they have achieved bodhicitta and are practicing the actual six perfections with Buddhahood ever approaching ever closer. So we too, right now, as aspirants to the bodhisattva paths, need to practice in the self-same way, reflecting on the qualities that our teacher has, seeing that he has achieved these qualities through continuous training over many lifetimes and is now guiding us skillfully in achieving those same qualities. And if we follow the advice of hearing many teachings, reflecting on them over a sustained period, we will give rise to the same qualities as our teacher. And as our knowledge and experience grows, we will come to see with ever more clarity that our teacher, our spiritual teacher in nature, is indivisible from all the Buddhas. And as we grow spiritually, this understanding will grow more profound within us, and thereby our reliance on our teacher ever stronger. And we'll start to see with ever greater clarity that our teacher is enacting the deeds of Bodhisattvas. Our teacher is fulfilling the aspirations of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in that he is engaging in the enlightened activities of Buddhas, in the deeds of Bodhisattvas, in that he is helping suffering sentient beings. And he's helping suffering sentient beings in the most important of ways, guiding them in how to abandon faults and how to develop good qualities. And we, as we grow and develop independence on his kindness and skill, as our faults diminish and our good qualities grow, we start to have an ever greater impact on those around us. And in this way, we directly help our teacher, indirectly help all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the fulfillment of their wishes through being a positive impact on others, not bringing suffering into the lives of others, but easing their burden of suffering.
Dini za Geshe Chanchu Sempa Diki Zangpo Nyamlen Jetang Dus Je Anta Chanchu Semkula Geshe Nyamlen Dus Nawares. Chizan Dini za da Ngarang Zui Ne Tadi Labja Leha Di Ngarang Zui Ne Dangpo Ngarang Zui Da Ngarang Zui Kula Chanchu Semkye Yomar Tarba Da Tarbi Ki Lam Kula Ma Gyawar. Chizan Lam Kula Kye Ki Tunda La Ngarang Zui Ne Ane Giti Na Da Da Tian Sangpa Tenchu Milu Rinpoche Top Dini Ki Gokhab Yudu Kapla Gewe Shin Da Chue Cheke Gewe Shinyi Yuedi Pe Kap Tere Ya Ngazu Gewe Shinyi Tilba Kusung Tusum Yu Yunden Jaya Dang Ane Chige Yunden Jaya Yunden Tene Deba Jaya Ane Yunden Tene Debi Kine Lama Liya Ane Ngazu Chige Sansingi Chimpa La So Chupa Puya La So Ba Dang Ane Dene Ge Ane Shibshu Shuya La So Ba Dene Gokab Raba Ina Dene Shibshu Shuya La So Ba Dang Ane Dene Ge Ane Chige Zohne Lami Ge Ganna Shaba Di Nyamlen Dene Tine Dibon Kiru Kasora Lunga Yus Nyejotim Surum Dine Sungore and Jimba Suebata Zunri Nyamlen Dus Chegure, Shekana Shawadi, Manzu Kantu, Chidu, Chinyamle Chigin, Sembes, that Dumba Yeshe, Manzuki Denigi, Nindelia, Nyamle Kantu to Chewadi, and the Dichagore. And Denigi, and Denigi Sosoralia, Nyamlen Chibi Kapla, Chuyu Jobo, Sosolia Chuchia like. Twinking to Yadang, and Deniki raw chicken digilia, and Jisu Iran Tayadang, and Digi Delia, and the Chinazuki, Dustin Bear, Warriors, and Jiki Java Chiad. On those shading on Zugi near Yamlin Dusche Warriors, the nature by Nangazuine, Yawachimalana Miko Wakto Tuya, and Mutuja, and Lam Yamlet, Gawachi Yobaza, and the Chik. Tarba Toyata, Chanchu Semgula Gituya, Yungres, Tiznada Chanchu Semgula Gabaina, and also Chanchu Sembanamki, Shengi, Dunga said the Digituel, Tondala, and the Pemba Yachibu Dubanashi, Narazuine, and then she Tugure, Chanchu Semgula Gasawana, then she and Pemba Yachimu Tugure, Chazala Migaka, Pe, Masigi, Sushindo Tugures, Dinezada, Anzuki, Tambonium Lechadi, Manzuna Kantu Chitu Chitin Chewadi, that didn't get the Sixty Dikita, Lapchele, the dinner.
De nangla kerengi gengi Carlo Vinci Tukere, the Petna, the Pena de Sujun Jimpa Sopa Tsundu, the Nikaran Yang something than Yeshi Sumpimpe? Okay, this. All those who aspire to the Bodhisattva paths, they engaged in this practice. All those who have achieved the Bodhisattva paths, they are engaging still in this practice. So therefore, it's imperative that we should follow their example and practice just like them. Because both ordinary and Arya Bodhisattvas are practicing in this same way and will continue to do so until they achieve the state of perfection, where all good qualities are perfected and all faults completely eliminated, and they arise as a Buddha. So we now, having achieved a human rebirth that is marked with the 18 freedoms and qualities, and have come under the care of a genuine spiritual teacher, we need to train in this way. Reflect on the qualities of his body, speech, and mind, cultivating ever stronger conviction that he has the ability to guide us to Buddhahood itself. Reflect that it's through following his advice wholeheartedly with complete commitment that we will achieve our desired result of lasting sustained happiness, freed from all problems, and moreover, being skilled, being able to lead others to such a state itself. And as this arises within us, the wish naturally, as this appreciation for our teachers arises within us, the wish naturally will come to repay that kindness. And this is done in the three ways of making material offerings, offering physical and verbal service to our teacher, and offering our practice to our teacher. And it's this third one that our teachers value most and desire from us the most. The offering of practice, what is this? It is hearing teachings and reflecting on the meaning of teachings, because this is the advice that our teacher is giving us. The advice in all the teachings, this is our direct spiritual advice from our spiritual friend. And therefore, it's this that we need to hear repeatedly, reflect on repeatedly over a sustained period. This meaning in brief is, apply ourselves to developing an ethical outlook, a mind of restraint. Apply ourselves to developing a generous attitude, a mind that wants to be of benefit to others. Apply ourselves to developing a patient outlook, a mind that stays subdued in the face of adversity. And apply ourselves to cultivating joyous perseverance, a mind that delights in virtue. And moreover, our Dharma friends, our wholesome companions, we also have a responsibility to support them, to be a friend to them, to encourage them in their activities of virtue, and through our own endeavors, to be an example in how we behave. And if we practice in this way, in other words, receive many teachings, reflect on them repeatedly over a sustained period, in this way, making the offering of practice to our teachers, we can be certain that through training the way that all bodhisattvas trained, we too will generate bodhicitta within us. When bodhicitta arises within us and becomes stable and we have experience of the actual six perfections, we will then be able to interact with beings in a way of great meaning, help them, be of benefit to them in a way of great meaning, help and guide them in exactly the same way as we are being aided and benefited now. So therefore, it's imperative that we make great effort following the advice of our spiritual teachers, which means putting it into practice, cultivating it within ourselves.
Lama mena sitermin sashi.
Okay. Dupane?
Dole.
Didi drusing down Java, di Kyawa.
Kyawa Zimba meba yi, Drui Paro Chimi, Yenden Tamje Rabzojan, Lama mena sitermin sungdwa de Dosan Yujumnedi.
I'd like to share a quotation from the Buddha here. Without an oar, a boat is unable to cross to the other side. Even if all good qualities were to be thoroughly completed, without a teacher, one cannot become released from the sufferings of the world. So I'll read this verse again. Without an oar, a boat is unable to cross to the other side. Even if all good qualities were to be thoroughly completed, without a teacher, one cannot become released from the sufferings of the world.
지선 주 바로 주되네 주야고 첨부 야고 쉬어베네 바로도 좋아라 야네 야와 베지 당고 야네 미신디 베지 단 좋고로 와서 베디 나시 나 저기 연된 탐제 아니 저기 탈바다 탐지 김비 고방 연된 토야라 연된 용수 소바 상이 고방 토와라 아니 라마 심마덴바 저기 데플로야다 직디와미 현대의 렌딘 제발이 지제발에 때네 안에지게 상기 탈바다 탐지 기부고 또 톱투고 말에 인지미지 라마 땡고 우리 예지 라마 질땐 도고리 와서 지사 라마 메나 시터민지 지사 연된 랍도 양서도 예 소이다 지와 데브라로네 되스도 신투고리 인자 이 신투고리 이내 연된 용소 소바 신고고리 대신발라 라마 메나 라마 심마덴 바이나 또 가수인들이 하고 말에 냠는지다 신 말에 마시바이나 아니 코발에 상지 고방 토야의 파수샤 코발에 두 말에서 그래 남아메나 시탈민스
Without an oar, a boat is unable to cross to the other side, even if all good qualities were to be thoroughly completed. Without a teacher, one cannot become released from the sufferings of the world. If one wants to cross even just a broad river, let alone the vast expanse of an ocean, one requires a vessel, such as a boat. But that vessel needs propulsion, so whether it's an oar or, in the modern context, an engine. This vessel requires propulsion. Without propulsion, one may leave the shore, but one's going to make very little progress. When our destination is the distant shore of liberation and enlightenment, to arrive at such a distant shore requires a skilled traveler, an experienced traveler. Because even if we have the wish to attain a state completely freed of suffering and a state where we can be of benefit to others, of greatest benefit to others, that mere wish is insufficient for us to cross this great ocean. It's insufficient for us to develop all good qualities and eliminate all faults. Errors will be made because we lack a skilled and experienced guide. So therefore it's imperative that we rely on a spiritual teacher, a virtuous friend, who is both skilled or knowledgeable and experienced, knowledgeable and skilled. Such a guide can lead us to cultivate the complete and unmistaken mental paths, and thereby, with ease, cross this great ocean and achieve a state freed of suffering, achieve a state where we can be of great meaning in this world. Now, the text turns to the Bodhisattva training of going for refuge to the three jewels. And aspirant bodhisattvas went for refuge to the three jewels, gained an understanding of the three jewels, and turned to them for refuge or for protection or for assistance.
다 찍디디래 라양 코르 존저 징바이 지딘 함이 지딘 라이 수직 교벌 뉴스 대치를 강라 잡나 밀루비 권조 잡조 게세 라린스.
Before I read the verses, translated just to say, when you hear the word refuge, think in terms of the meaning that synonyms will be protection or assistance or help. In this way, one gains a clearer understanding of what is meant by refuge. So now to the seventh practice. Themselves continuously bound within the prison of samsara, which worldly God is able to provide protection. Therefore, when seeking refuge, turning to the undeceiving three jewels is the practice of bodhisattvas.
That is all. Rang Koyo Zonder Jingbai, Jidin Lami Suji Gyobar New City. Da Jidin Belha, Jabba Janda, the Bene, Jidin Bella Jera Chimboda, Zutu, Yedegana, the Nigger Kuzula, Yetian, the Nichio in Jidin Belhade, Jidin Belha de Gila. Koranzo in there, Rang Koyo Zonder Jingbai. Koranzo led a new moment on the Korakio Lane to get the Chesan Koranzo Hora Tario Mare. Matawa in the Koranzo Hora Matavare. Matawas on Koranzi Lam Tarbada Tamji Kimbo Komanto Tien Lam, the Hanzo Yonzo Soba Tiedi, Tien Tuyade, Kamna Merba, Samba Chidawa Shin Tien Tuyade, Gale Habara Chagures. Chesan Diniza, Rang Koyo Zonder Jingbai. Jidin Lami Jobosune. Diniza, Soso Koala Korache, and Sosugi, Lam Yamlin Jetana, Kamna Merba, Samba Chitawashin, Makemba, Gün Chazan Mabawada, Yundin Chazan, Demevana, Shen, Ya, and Lamdun Jeje, Tarbata Tamji Kimiko Mala, go to a Nubo Yomares, Chazan go to Mares.
Looking at the first two lines together, themselves continuously bound within the prison of samsara, which worldly God is able to provide protection. So amongst worldly gods, some will have a great reputation, and may have power, but all of them remain bound within cyclic existence. They too are chained by the fetters of the afflictions within samsara. And therefore, being samsaric beings, by definition, they haven't eliminated all faults. Not only have they not eliminated all faults, they haven't been able to develop all good qualities. So therefore, whilst they may have qualities, they may have power, and they may have power and ability, they themselves are trapped within samsara, and therefore they don't have the experience of cultivating paths they have never cultivated. And therefore, they lack the skill to be able to guide beings in accordance with the individual disposition and inclination of beings. They cannot be skillful guides. They cannot be skillful guides because they can't lead beings along a path of spiritual development that they themselves are yet to develop. So therefore, themselves continuously bound within the prison of samsara, there is no worldly God able to provide protection.
Dene jike lam nyamlenji lam gule majike denegi ladike sigor jiktim bala denegi zutu tuyada and denegi jikya na dela capsu jovan disugi ngazo disugi ane kowala gyopche ya ane ngaro simjin korwi dungala tarbata tamji kimbe lamno ko tugu mar lam den tugu mares jiza dene inza dia to gyap ngone chagyo mares ro disula gyapsu jo gyamruche konju shambala matembe tichigu sam delia tentyo baina ane tabada tamji kimbe ko toptuku mares.
Worldly gods are those that are trapped within the prison of samsara, which means they haven't achieved Arya paths. So being gods, they'll certainly have power. And there's powers that we as human beings do lack. But whilst they therefore have these qualities of powers that we don't have, they cannot lead us in our spiritual development because they do not have experience of developing spiritually in the way that leads to liberation and enlightenment. And therefore they are not a suitable refuge. Or to translate this differently, they are not suitable to guide us, to protect us. They are not suitable to help us or assist us. And the reason they are not suitable as a refuge or to protect us or assist us is because they lack knowledge and experience in spiritual development.
Da dine ane garele kyapsu doguri lamna da deche gangla kyapna milubi konjo sum konjo kyapro gyase lale hins chesang da nganzo ki kowi dunga tada la ya kyobda tarbada tamje kimbe goba tobi ge lam den nyugen dine kyop nyugen sure konjo sum res chesang dele ya kyapsu done milu hares luwa yo mares chesang di kyoptu res den notu yo mares chesang dine insa nga konjo sum la kyapsu doguri eje gang 대시 강라 겹나 밀루베시디 델레야 겹수 토바는 노르 메바 아니 겹투게는 수레스 권초숨레스 지상 권초숨나 겹수 토고레시.
Therefore, when seeking refuge, or therefore when seeking protection, or therefore when seeking assistance, turning to the undeceiving three jewels is the practice of bodhisattvas. Recognizing that worldly gods cannot assist us. Rather, those who can help us develop protection from suffering, are the three jewels. It's they who are genuine refuges, actual refuges, because they can provide the protection that we desire.
나 건조 숨세디 가relana sanyo 건조 단 최 건조 기능 건조 어서 숨들라 건조 숨식으로 당한주 접수 주게 접이 유될 낭비기 접수 주비 유될 건조 숨마다 델레 하바 마와 샤고 말 델레 뉴원에 지고 말이지 제상 건조 숨내 sanyo 건조 최 건조 기능 건조들이 sanyo 건조의 겹된 법을 그래 제상 겹된 법을 제상 sanyo 건조의 sanyo 호롱 연대 균 군세 녀모 바샤의 제 방치 균이리 방고에 차상 방차제 연대 릭신고에 차상 신사제 제자의 균 군세 연대 군대레스 제자다 상계기 최마 셰바당 신기 남든 가데 제가 감나 뭐바 삼바다 튠바 지다와 신도 뒤다 내가블라 가데 숨고 차상 된투고레스 제자 된디게 탈바다 탐지기고 고발라 다 상기 된디 람테라 상기를 하바요 말레스 제자 다 대야야 바시가요 말스 그렇습니다. 나중에 마신반에 지대와 선바다 마신와의 연구로 상계라 되니기 괜찮아 방차와서 마신비기 괜 자와기네 바샤다 제가 방차와인자 되니기 말 제가 되니자 캡틴 버버 상계 건조스데 람마 마창라 마노와 띵게데 상기데스 다 내가 나중에 상계 점낸 디게 되니기 람든 Geshe Rabten nga zuge nyamlen jidu kabla nga zuge da mashin wada de nga zulya ji ro chikin sures gidin gonjo res jesan gidin gonjo de gyab jube da ro res jesan nga zuge ne sanyi sunshi be nyamlen jel ya ro chikin dires ro chikin da ro da deji nga zu zhuo Zangpo xeba na xin zhuo Zangpo de chago de jesan nga zu mashin bala ma za gabriel nga zuge 마싱발에 된바다 된디게 최제하게 안에 지금 로지 안에 튕긴주야 된지야래 안에 겹주베 따로 기준 거죠 차고래서 다 잡고에 가려서는 최고건조들이 해지 최고건조스는 람덴하고 고된이들이 시고래 람덴시대 람덴하고 고된 안에 파베기 람다 고된 람도 될 고된들라 안에 묘모바 빠야 충분이야 림바시는 방비 고된 rik 망보용으로와 안에 고된들라 안에 제 내가 최고건조서 제가 나 상기기 나한테로 토비야데 가서는 건조 최고건조된 나한테로 끼고 토보고 그래 제가 최고건조된 나한테로 끼어도 아주 코와래 타야기 타야로 고주고 그래 제가 녀모바 제가 빵야로 고주니도 치네 당보 토에도 고주고 그래 제가 최고건조 做타바세디 냥데제 토에도 아주 코위 동안에 차상래 타주고래. 디나네 코위게다 최고죠. 디네 미니베 양디에서 토요도 아니 아주 디바 바차다 제바 바차 사요고 토주고래. 지산 지 최고죠. 간주 길에 깨고 거래. 지산 최고죠. 간주 길에 깨게 된다라 상이게 람 냠는 제대 최고죠. 토비에 누수수수 제대 대수 냠는 지고서 냠는 심바티 띵고 그래. 다 상이게 땜바 나시 가서 디 토비에 된다라 냠는 제뒤 갑라 가서 마신 바다 마가 마두바 지디나 로치긴데 기둥 거주 가서 람된제 누시네 람된제 장아주 진네 누용을 제가 디니 인자 아니 건초숨데 디레스 제가 겹 상요 건초데 겹된 보보레 네 기능 건초데 겹투베 따로 최 건초데다 겹무에레스 제가 디니 인자 델라티 텐제 템바이나 겹수 제바이나 디 이체체 점로 제바는 루어요 말 아주 코발 마타야기 너야 람 기네메발 루어메발 제가 건초숨나 겹수로가 디레스 다 겹이도 건초숨 샤고 김센디로와
For a Buddhist, there are only 3 objects of refuge, the 3 jewels. There are no others, no more than these 3 jewels. So the 3 jewels are the Buddha jewel, the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel. Firstly then, the Buddha jewel. The Buddha jewel is referred to as a teacher of refuge. So the teacher who presented the Buddha Dharma. The Buddha jewel then is a being who has attained a state of perfection, a state where all faults, all the afflicted minds, together with their seeds, as well as their stains, have been completely eradicated. There is no trace of even the slightest fault left. Moreover, all good qualities have been developed to a state of perfection. Therefore, with faults completely eradicated and good qualities developed to a state of perfection, a being arises as a Buddha. And as a Buddha, then with free of faults and with qualities perfected, a Buddha can guide beings no matter what their personality, their disposition or inclination is, whether it's a being that is greatly developed, such as an Arya Bodhisattva, or an ordinary Bodhisattva, or an ordinary being such as ourselves. A Buddha can perfectly guide all beings, and guide beings in how to achieve short-term benefit, how to turn towards virtue and strive for a good rebirth, as well as achieving long-term happiness, such as liberation and enlightenment. So therefore, a Buddha, the Buddha jewel, is able to guide all beings perfectly in the complete and unmistaken cultivation of all mental paths. A Buddha is the being who can guide one to cross the ocean of suffering and achieve a perfect state just like the Buddha has achieved. So this is the explanation of the first of the 3 jewels, the Buddha jewel. Then the third jewel, that of the Sangha jewel. These are Arya beings who have a direct realization of emptiness. They are our companions, our Dharma friends, those who directly interact with us and assist with us. They are the ones who help us and guide us directly, our companions. Then the second jewel, the Dharma jewel, this is the actual refuge. The actual refuge, then, is the Dharma jewel. And the Dharma jewel is true cessations and true paths. The Dharma jewel are realizations. Where are these found? Within the continuum of the Buddha jewel and the Sangha jewel. Within the continuum of Arya beings. So there are many levels of abandoning the afflicted minds, and many levels to the acquiring of good qualities. And this is what is then referred to by true cessations and true paths that are achieved with the direct realization of emptiness. So this is the Dharma jewel which is found in the continuum of Arya beings. And it is this that we need to strive to develop. Being the actual refuge, or to translate this differently, the actual protection. This is what we need to strive to develop within ourselves, because it is the Dharma jewel that protects us from suffering, because it's the Dharma jewel that is true cessations and true paths. Having realized emptiness directly, having cultivated true cessations and paths within our continuum, we attain protection from suffering. We attain liberation from suffering. And we can cultivate this to the point of Buddhahood, where we attain non-abiding nirvana. That is the Dharma jewel, the actual refuge. The Sangha jewel are those who accompany and guide us in our spiritual development. And as we follow the advice of our teachers, and we gain ever more spiritual development, our conviction in the three jewels grows ever stronger. Our appreciation for the Buddha jewel, those beings who have strived for so many lifetimes to become perfected and have presented the Buddha Dharma. Those, the Sangha jewel, who are our companions, who are Arya beings and guiding us directly, as well as then our conviction that is through their guidance that we will develop what they have achieved, the Dharma jewel, in our own continuum. And that is the actual refuge, the actual protection. With this growing ever stronger within us, our trust in the three jewels, our refuge in the three jewels, grows ever stronger.
Dine za janju semba namje dangbo nyamlen chide kala konjo sumli ya jamru chebares chizan jamru chedan di kane chebares ne da simchen tamjo khowe dunga dela tar gudu khowe dunga dela mata na tab mindu sanbege denige samlo tang denige samlo tang dene di jelya simchen tamjo khowe dunga le kyoege nibado suldu sun japne konjo sumbo dela du sede denige gongba chebares chizan dine inza da semjen 탐지 코르 동안에다 건조 숨디 껴버리 샘비기 야 건조 숨나 샘 딩기 이시 예디다 점로서 온두스께는 점로셔 바레스 제가 점로기 균이디 당보디 semjen 저 코르 동안에 탈고도 샘비 예중체 다 될라 껴벼 코르 동안에 껴벼 니바디 건조 숨나 두 샘비기 통위기 건조 숨이 인다 통위기 지 삼는 이시 니니버 될라 때네 안에 가서 다 말씀제 탐저 코리 동아 타달래 껴야지 건주스미 껴버리 셈 딩기 이시제 건주스미 이제제네 겸로 제발해서 되네게 겸로 제네 아니다 겸주게 랍자 다다 대시 공도 셰바나니 겹자 랍자 조다 주린 라바숨지 냠레 주린 라바데 딩이징 라바 셰다기 라바 냠렌 제야다 두제네 냠렌 제데 균제 맹아 둥기 잠니지 어두서 냠렌 제 되네 자주심be 고바 토소하래 제래 janjusimbenyam na janjusimba 고방 토 차네 janjusim gyulaki 사회제라 되는 랑기 파신 중에 냠len체 랑기 다 권조숨기 겹수 딜레 슉체 겹수 송요 권에 안에 파신 중에 냠len 랑기 냠len체 랑기 냠len체가 맞아 안시행기 두마세다 디기 주비알에 시할이야 안에 권조숨나 겹수 줘야다 권조숨기 겸들 랍자려야 랍예게 돌아야 안시할이야 펜바 뒤다 남바군도 시행기 동화세 디기 투에 donal야 안도신 차례는 거래 어두스 나와래 지난 게세 전주세만 남기 안 냠는 제다 안도수 시바래서 그래.
Let's then look at, now having looked at refuge, let's look at the practice of refuge. So this, we can say, has 5 components. The first 2 are the causes that lead to the generation of refuge. The third is what refuge is. And then fourthly, the trainings that one who has gone for refuge embarks in. So what are the first 2 steps, which are the cultivation of the causes? One here reflects on the sufferings of samsara. And through reflecting on the sufferings of samsara gives rise to a spontaneous wish to be freed from the sufferings of the lower realms, wishing for liberation of rebirth in the sufferings of the lower realms. So this is sufficient for the first step. But here I would encourage you to take it further and reflect on the sufferings of samsara in its entirety, also of the so-called happy migrations, giving rise to the strong wish, I don't want to remain bound, trapped in this prison of samsara. I want to be freed from the suffering states of samsara. And that then is the first cause. The second is, how can I do this? Who has the ability to offer protection from the sufferings of samsara? Here we reflect on the qualities of the three jewels as was just presented. The Buddha jewel, the teacher of refuge, the Dharma jewel, the actual refuge, true cessation and paths, and the Sangha jewel, our companions, those Arya beings who are our Dharma friends. Here reflecting that they have the ability to provide protection from suffering. In other words, through relying on the three jewels, I will give rise to the Dharma jewel within myself and thereby have protection from suffering. One has developed the two causes leading to the cultivation of refuge, the third step here, which is from the depths of one's heart. One has unshakable conviction that the three jewels have the ability to provide one with protection from the sufferings of samsara. And thereby one turns to them for protection. One turns to the three jewels for protection whenever one is suffering. And then fourthly, the trainings haven't gone for refuge. The trainings of refuge that one embarks in haven't gone for refuge. And to present these now in brief, it means receiving many teachings, reflecting on them and meditating on them. This is the training of refuge. So how does one go about developing the Dharma jewel within oneself, becoming a Sangha jewel and eventually a Buddha jewel too? It's the hearing, reflecting and meditating repeatedly over a sustained period. This is the precept of refuge. And one needs to then reflect on the sufferings of samsara, develop the practices that lead to the generation of definite emergence as well as bodhicitta, the 6 cause and 1 effect method, cultivating love and compassion and bodhicitta itself, and then engaging in the practices of the perfections. So this is, in brief, the precepts of refuge, applying oneself to following one's teacher's advice, which is to receive teachings and reflect on them. And then lastly, fifthly, having gone for refuge, engaging wholeheartedly with full commitment in the process of receiving teachings and reflecting and meditating on them, is helping others to go for refuge. So what this means is that as one spiritually develops, just being a greater beneficial presence in the life of others, that is the first step. And as one cultivates these qualities within oneself, one is an ever greater beneficial presence in the life of others. And in this way, one serves as an example of the three jewels, an example of the Buddha Dharma. And when one then actually gives rise to bodhicitta within one's continuum, then one is truly skilled in guiding others, turning them towards the unmistaken paths of the Buddha Dharma, and thereby guiding them to have faith in the three jewels, guiding them to see that the Dharma jewel is what protects the cultivation of the Dharma jewel within ourselves. This is the true refuge. This is what truly protects us.
kunjo sumbo tila nga zu ina kowe dunga tila matana tamindu kowe dunga tagudu sambige rangchen tsama kowe dunga tila matana tagudu samje diniki ngejung komya ta da dine kowe dunga le tila tibegi nyubadi sulu yorasanda kemnya kunjo sumbo tila yore sachi yore sa da dine yobaza da kemnya kunjo nga zu simje tamje kowe dunga tatale kemnya kunjo sumbo gyogri sebe sem dingi ichiche sem dingi ichiche 어디 이시제다. 다 이시제네 당아 저기 디 이시제바 겸조세 그래. 겸조 접수 줘야 되래. 다 이시제네 겸조 랍절라 랍고 와서 겸조 랍제게 랍야디 마 저기 다 개와다 개와서야 제다 디바 뽀야 되래. 기디 랑도르셔야 돼. 디니 인상 아 저기 기위 신인 다 대시 겸조 건조스미야 상계 건조 사다 상계 때다 랑기 기위 신인데 오예네 저 상계기 능크 소소게랴 람되게 아니 기위 신인 넘버 20 폐샤바데 기위 신인이다 랑기 상계니데 오예메 섬제 델라미게 기진제하당 안데 지게 람에게 기진제비에 되는 구송도수 연된 제비에 되는 람에게 그 송셰비에 다 람에게 소소가라들야 개와 줍다 Jimbe Yamle Surin Sube Yamle La Sobata, Deniki Lunga Yisumgi Surim Soya La Sobata, and the Chiki Jimbe Yamle Soya, Denikaja Lame Lam doing out in Yamle Jela, Getik Pongdur, Langdur Chegi, Yamle Denshabati, that's how you jump into somebody, Sanya Ranga Lama, Sanya Jumden, Moye Mesa, Captain Boba, Sanya Jumden, Somba, Dire Samje. Society Yamle Huda Padacheda. The Nigida Sosugi Yamlen Chebale, draw Zangpo, and the Givi Casa public in the Delia on it and the Debache, that the Ni Yamlen Chebalia, draw the public in the G, that the Lua Yomar Samje, Ishiche Janzuki Yamlen Chere. Those in the Yamlen Chebaina, and the Arzuki, needing in the Latin chairs, Yamlen Cheche. The Nigijin Yamlen Chebaina, Maubana, Arzula, Shokunjo said Guli Kiungure, the Niguli Chebaina, Janju Semba Chayada, public Gansa Chayungure, the Nichebaina, me public Gansa Chebaina, that the public Gansa de Janju Semba de Ye, and Shelley Pembacandis to Ban, Hega Dinaji to Tubachigi, Samje, on those Chenazuki, some Dache. Jewadi, that didn't get Shogi Lobsang as some died in the Shakor Comjade, Tisuyane and the Comia Shakore. Tanning Jablola on the Shadeda. Koyu dunga kanishine chasa deso digbi legi tewu res de and said on digor ma shue.
This is how all bodhisattvas have practiced, and all bodhisattvas continue to practice till enlightenment is achieved, and therefore wanting to become just like them, we should practice just like they do. The first step here then is to reflect on the sufferings of samsara, giving rise to the burning desire within oneself to attain freedom from this prison of samsara. With a clear recognition, there is no happiness worthy of striving for in samsara because it's temporary, it's fleeting, and it's deceptive. Seeing how giving rise to this strong desire to be freed from samsara, we generate definite emergence within ourselves. Then we again turn our mind intentionally to the quality of the three jewels, because we know the three jewels have the ability to guide us to achieving a state freed from suffering. They can provide us the refuge or the help, the assistance that we require. Moreover, it's the three jewels themselves that are, in particular, the Dharma jewel, that is the protection that we desire from suffering. And again, just to say as the translator, this word refuge, think of it as protection, help, assistance. It has all these meanings. So that's the second step. The first was the sufferings of samsara. The second was that the three jewels have the ability to provide protection. And then, in dependence on these two, comes about the achievement of the third step, which is with conviction arising from the depths of our heart. We know that it's the three jewels can provide protection from suffering. And here then, the fourth step is to cultivate the precepts of refuge, which is, another way to express it, accumulate virtue and eliminate non-virtue. Because it's through following the precepts of refuge that our faults will cease and our virtuous qualities will grow. How do we do that? How do we fulfill the precepts of refuge? This relates then directly to the preceding training, the preceding practice of Bodhisattvas, which is through relying on our spiritual teacher, who is indivisible in nature from the Buddhas. Our spiritual teacher serves as the representative that whom we can directly interact with, the representative of the Buddhas, a being that we can directly interact with, and who can directly guide us in the cultivation of the complete and unmistaken paths that will definitely result in enlightenment. So here, having generated both in the previous meditation great faith in our teachers, as well as here now having turned to the three jewels with strong unmistaken conviction or unshakable conviction, we relate now to our spiritual teacher as being an emissary of the Buddhas, and thereby presenting the complete and unmistaken teachings. With such an understanding arising in our mind, it becomes very easy to fulfill the precepts of refuge, which are all the teachings that we receive. We need to reflect on these, continue to receive more teachings, and continue to reflect and meditate on them repeatedly over a sustained period. And now, in dependence on these meditations, we'll want to do this wholeheartedly. We will, with ease, turn away from all the mundane activities that consume so much time and energy, and do just what needs to be done so that we have an abundance of time and energy for our spiritual development. And we will do so with the clear objective in mind that I'm striving to become an Arya Bodhisattva, because when I achieve the Arya grounds, the Arya Bodhisattva grounds, the Dharma jewel will arise in my continuum and I will have achieved protection from suffering. And it's at that point that I can be of great benefit to others, guiding them skillfully in how to achieve a similar state. So that is how to meditate on refuge. This afternoon then we'll continue coming to the eighth training of Bodhisattvas, eighth practice of Bodhisattvas, which is looking at how all the sufferings that samsaric beings experience, all the sufferings that are experienced within the realms of samsara, come from non-virtuous karma, from negative karma. Okay, thank you.